Ambassador Vasyl Miroshnichenko, welcome. Great to have you with us here for this live audience program as well. Look, we just saw some of the debate this week around this latest support package. Let's start there. Are you really happy with this latest support from Australia?
Look, I want to share with you a story of last week. In Kramatorsk, Russians sent a ballistic missile which destroyed a popular restaurant. It was a pizza place. It killed 12 people, injured 65. Among those who were killed were 3 children. 2 of those children were twins, 14-year-old girls. And their mother was looking for wedding dresses to bury them. Because in Ukraine we have a tradition of burying young girls in a wedding dress because they never get married. Can you imagine what we have to live through on a daily basis? That's what every Ukrainian waking up reads. This is what kind of news we get. Look, definitely we are incredibly grateful to Australia for the support provided, for the latest package of support. And it goes in line of the support that's been provided by this government and the previous government. Of course, we need to ensure that the war does not last for as long as it takes, but rather that it ends as quickly as possible, because the longer it drags on, it brings more death, more destruction, more misery.
So to that end, is what Australia is offering enough support right now?
Look, we appreciate what's coming, and I personally would like to thank Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for traveling to Ukraine last year. He could see it with his own eyes, what Russians have done in Ukraine. Good, there is a continuous dialogue between our ministers of defense. They've recently met in Singapore. It would be wonderful to have Minister Penny Wong visit Kyiv. I'm in constant contact with Defense Department and the Defense Minister's office and seeing what else could be done to help Ukraine.
So you're inviting the Foreign Minister Penny Wong to come to Kyiv?
Absolutely. Our Foreign Minister would be delighted to see her.
Do you think that might change Australia's view and attitude?
That would help her to understand Ukraine better.
You don't think she does?
I think she does understand Ukraine very well, but it always, when you visit, it gives you a different angle. It gives you a bit of hands-on, and that gives you, I mean, I've seen it with your Prime Minister. I was there on that trip, and we were in Irpin, we were in Bucha. We were able to hear those stories which were out there shared with people being under the Russian occupation. And I think that's a good opportunity to learn.
Why are you mentioning Penny Wong particularly? Are you suggesting she's not as perhaps more focused on this region than Ukraine?
Look, the Russian aggression in Ukraine has undermined global security. It's an issue which has affected everybody. It has undermined security in the Pacific. We are seeing what's happening with food crisis, with energy crisis, how many countries become exposed and vulnerable to these shocks. And of course, we have to deal with that. Ukraine is one of the biggest providers of food on the global markets. And we were not able to deliver that food to the countries in need in Africa and Southeast Asia, who suffered because of that.
You talk about the energy shock as part of this, and that's pushed up commodity prices. It's helped commodity resource exporters like Australia. We see our budget, we're going to talk about this shortly, our budget surplus is looking a whole lot bigger as a result. Looking at that, do you think Australia is being generous enough?
Many of our partners have inadvertently benefited from the increased prices for commodities. And of course, this is all the result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But countries like Canada, Norway, Australia, the increased prices for commodities have really done well for their budgets and the surplus of budgets. And we see how these countries are stepping up their support. Just earlier this year, Norway has committed a multi-billion, multi-year program of support for Ukraine. The same in Canada, and I think there are many opportunities.
Multi-billion, you'll say?
Yeah, multi-billion-dollar assistance, both economic assistance, military assistance, and it's coming. Look, we are, incredibly grateful for whatever we get, for every dollar, for every round of ammunition, for every Bushmaster. We're extremely grateful for that.
But are you saying because we're benefiting in a budget sense from those high commodity prices, because of what's happened there, Australia has a moral obligation to do more than it's doing?
Look, I just got back from Kyiv. I was there 3 weeks ago. And every day Kyiv is under attacks. and kids who play out on the playground, and then you see them running into shelters when there is a siren, because you never know when it's going to hit. This is what we have to go through every day, being traumatized, being out there. And the support we get from our partners, this is the resilience of that international coalition, if this is what is important, because only together, when we are stronger together, because look, if Australia were invaded or at war, we'll be out there for you to help you. More so, there are so many lessons which could be learned from this war.
But just to pick up on your point, though, about countries like Australia that are benefiting in a budget sense from the war, are you saying they have a particular obligation to do more?
Look, it's up to the government to decide what else they can do for Ukraine. Apparently, as an ambassador here, I would be delighted if there would be more support coming. And we're definitely thankful for what's been provided so far. And
well, let's go through some of the items. The Hawkeyes. Ukraine ran a very public and prominent social media campaign, Free the Hawkeyes. You even had your Eurovision finalists join in on the campaign as well. You've not got one Hawkeye, though. Will you keep up that campaign? Are you disappointed not to get any?
Look, the Hawkeyes already have a life on its own. It's something that it was just captured the imagination of the people.
Why is that?
I think this is just unique because this is a new piece of equipment which has been produced, or 1,100 of those. We see how Hawkeyes could be rolled out for different missions. They could be used for reconnaissance, they could be used for electronic warfare. Once integrated with air defense systems, they could be very handy air defense systems. And as you see, Russians are sending so many missiles at Ukraine, so air defense systems are in high need.
But apparently the brakes are no good. The parts can't be supplied, so if there is a problem, they could be shot to pieces very quickly on the battlefield. That's the argument.
Look, Ukraine is the best testing ground. Where else can you test your military kit? It could be tested in Ukraine, it could be improved, and this is what's going to increase the capability of your defense forces. So that's been tested, and this is, by the way, many different defense industry companies throughout the world are testing their equipment in Ukraine now. We make it better, we make your defenses much stronger, and that's a great contribution to help Ukraine. But look at the Bushmasters. They've become a symbol of Australian support. 90 of those been committed. They're saving lives. They're getting wounded people from the front lines. And that's a huge contribution that you've made. And sending more Bushmasters would really be very helpful.
So, more Bushmasters beyond the 90. There is a concern here about running down Australia's capability as well. Do you appreciate that, or do you think there should be more going?
I think Bushmasters never had so much publicity as they got out of this war.
That's probably true.
And I know that many countries are now looking into actually commissioning your Bendigo facility to produce more. So I think that will create more jobs, that will keep that facility going, more taxes for the government, and actually it's the right thing to do.
Just on that, would you prefer countries like Australia to give Ukraine money and then you can choose what you want to buy? It might be Bushmasters, rather than giving you stock that we're soon going to be getting rid of anyway?
Oh, different options are possible. And previously, Australia procured and actually allocated money for the purchase of weapons for Ukraine.
Is that better? Is that a better option?
Look, it's just one of the options which is out there, because often I hear the argument that because different countries have different capabilities, whatever they have in stock.
You're being very diplomatic here, Ambassador, as we would expect.
It's my job.
Exactly. The M113 armoured vehicles, there's 28 of those coming your way as well. Look, these have been variously described as Vietnam War relics, obsolete boneyard vehicles, unwanted garage sale stock. How would you describe them?
I've never ridden one.
Right.
So it's difficult for me to assess the feedback that was out there. I know we have a fleet of 300 of those, and they will be made, and they've been used. And of course, especially when we're going to go into the winter, starting from October, because they're on tracks, so they could still be employed, and they could be quite handy.
So they're going to be useful?
Yeah, they're going to be useful.
So
let me just compare with Bushmasters. So Bushmasters, because of their design, they have this additional protection from the bottom because of their
V-shaped bottom.
Right. So, and whereas from what I understand, the M113s don't have that protection. If they hit a mine, most likely you will get killed if you're inside, right? So Bushmasters perform much better, they're much faster, but this, two vehicles are used in different times of seasons, right? So
those who are saying these M113s are junk, they're wrong.
No, I don't know. I'm not a military expert to comment on that. I know that they will be used and they will be useful. And of course, look, it's just
Would you like the M1 Abrams tanks? We've got a bunch of those, 59. They're due to be phased out of service next year. Would you like those?
Well, that would make global headlines if Australia joined the tank coalition. As you remember, for a long time we were campaigning, Ukraine was campaigning for a tank coalition, and Germany has released the Leopard tanks. It was huge. We already will be seeing how those Leopard tanks and brigades are being used right now to repel the Russians from Ukraine, to restore the sovereignty. I think any support for Ukraine will be a very good investment into the restoration of the rules-based international system. Well, something which is so important for every Pacific nation. Because if you can allow a bigger power to curse a smaller power militarily, that's it, and you don't fight back and you let that happen, that sends a very wrong signal, especially to your neighbors, to countries who depend so much on your support to be sovereign and to make their own decisions and not to be influenced by bigger powers.
The Prime Minister will be at the NATO summit in Lithuania in about 10 days' time. I understand he might have a bit more to offer. Are you expecting any more from Australia from the Prime Minister's visit?
We would definitely welcome more support, and should the government decide to do it, I'm sure President Zelensky will be very thankful.
Let me turn to what's been going on in Russia over the past week. A lot of head scratching now about where it leaves Putin, Prigozhin, the Russian state. What do you think is going to happen from here?
I don't think we have to be captured by this palace intrigue and the power in Russia. What we have seen, we haven't seen any major impact in the battlefield. As the mutiny was unfolding, Russians kept on shelling Ukrainian cities, sending missiles, heavy battlefields on the front lines. Definitely the reputation of Vladimir Putin was dented, his leadership was challenged. And in a country like Russia, it's really extraordinary to see it happening. You understand, Russia is running, and Putin is running the country as a thug. So it's pretty much a gangster country, and all these thugs, and somebody revolts all of a sudden.
I mean, are you worried?
This is already kind of very bizarre, right?
If he got toppled, is there a fear that you could get something even worse?
I don't think anything can be worse, right? I mean, can it get any worse? Look, Russians have deployed 150,000 people in Ukraine, occupy 20% of the land. They just shell us on a continuous basis, killing, raping, and murdering people. Can it get any worse? I don't think so. It's already pretty bad. But I think that the change of the regime, if we can win the war on the battlefield and can defeat Russian troops on the ground, that will precipitate the demise of this dictatorial regime, which has stolen future from the Russian people, which has stolen what's the legacy that Putin is going to leave. People are, pariah state, failed state, toxic. Nobody wants to deal with Russia. What kind of legacy is he leaving to the Russian people? Let's save Russian people. Let's give them hope for democracy. The only way to do it is provide more military assistance to Ukraine.
Ambassador, finally, before I let you go, I think a lot of Australians have great sympathy for what's happening to the Ukrainian people, but perhaps not the personal understanding of what it really means. You were just there 2 or 3 weeks ago. Can you give us a sense of what it means for your family, your friends, for those who are really experiencing this firsthand?
It's devastating. I think one of the issues as we move on will be mental health. Ukrainian population of 44 million people are heavily traumatized by what they see, what they read. It's live. It's on your Google. You go there. It's on your phone. You can see it real. Of course, it's not a show, right? It's live. And every day there are more and more funerals of people you knew, people who's been somebody's friends or relatives. And this is what we live through. It's extremely difficult. And I spent 3 weeks in Ukraine now in May and June, and seeing that is really heartbreaking. And it's on a daily basis for 16 months as Russians keep on destroying our infrastructure. I was just there when they deliberately destroyed Kakhovka Dam, which has flooded large parts of Ukraine, creating one of the biggest man-made environmental disasters. We hear that they have mined the nuclear power plant, and they may use nuclear as a blackmail. Radiation does not know borders. The contamination which can happen would be devastating for entire Europe. We need to stop it.
Well, Ambassador, we do appreciate you sharing all of that with us this morning. Would you please thank Vasyl Miroshnichenko? Thank you.